All right, so Pierre Poilievre just had an interview after his press conference, and he perfectly lays out how he thinks he can win the election. Now, whether he's right or wrong, we'll have to see. And if you have any critiques, again, please don't be afraid to comment. This is not an I love Pierre and I love everything that conservatives do channel. This is my honest opinion, commentary, so please don't be shy. If Pierre does something I don't like, I'm going to say it. If he does something I do like, I'm going to say it. But without further ado, we're going to get into this. Now, sorry, before we do, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps grow the channel. I appreciate you guys so much for doing that. So now we're going to look at it, and then we're going to talk about it.
The issues are facing us and what the difference is between conservatives and liberals. The part that's missing is how do we make it happen? So one of the big things I think, Pierre, is that, you know, this time last year, I think we were ahead by about 20 points in the polls, and we seem to have squandered that lead to the finish line. I think markcarney almost took a lot of your speech and turned it into some of his, and more or less took a poser position that he would reduce carbon taxes, not quite, and push on resource development, not quite, and push for building nation-building projects. So I was wondering if you can sort of take the lead from there, that he's taken that, and what your transition from your past pitch is to what it is to going forward today.
So to win the next election, we have to be the party of affordability. We have to be the party that promises that people will have affordable homes, affordable food, they can afford to start families and build a future here in this country. And that people can afford to have hope again. That's what's missing. We need to be the party that allows people to have hope that if they work hard, they can have a great life in this country. As for Mr. Carney, he hasn't honored any of these promises. This is why you have to vote for the real thing. You know, it's one thing for liberals to plagiarize the conservative platform 60 days before the election, but as we can see, 60 days after the election, they forget about all those promises. I mean, let's look at the promises. Let's go through them one by one. He said that we'd have the fastest growing economy in the G7. We have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. He said he'd double home building. Home building is falling by 13%. He said that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery stores. Well, since he took office, grocery price inflation has been 40% higher in Canada than in the US, and we have 7% more people lined up at food banks. He said he'd negotiate a deal, negotiate a win with President Trump. And here we are, 8 months later, still no win, still no deal, still no elbows, still no jobs. And then finally, he said that he would spend less, and we see in the budget he's spending 100% more to our deficit. So Mark Carney is the most costly prime minister in Canadian history. His broken promises are costing Canadians. We, by contrast, are telling the same story. You'll notice that the policies that I advocated from that mic, they have not changed. I have not uttered one change in direction because we know what this country needs. We need low taxes, balanced budgets, free enterprise, fast permits, and that is how we're going to unlock the promise of this country. Thank you.
So, a great answer. If I could just dig in a little bit different, because again, you're right. You haven't wavered in your comments from the beginning, this time last year and previous to now. What is it going to take to win? It seems like we were caught a little bit flat-footed in the run-up to the election, particularly in some 93 ridings that by the time the writ was dropped, we didn't have members lined up for. Do you think that more local riding input could yield better selected and prepared local candidates? And is a higher priority today going forward?
I think that's part of it. We obviously have to, I think we're going to nominate candidates earlier this time. I'll add to that, though, we got 2.5 million more votes in the last election than the prior one. We added 25 additional seats. We had the highest share of votes since 1988 and the biggest number of votes our party has ever received, campaigning on making the country more affordable and bringing change. So we have to make small gains on top of that already big gain, and then I think Canadians will elect an affordable government that will deliver an affordable life to the Canadian people.
Great answer. You're a great politician. understanding that you as the leader...
And that's the thing. It's like, I don't really hate what Pierre said, but in my opinion, I think he kind of missed an opportunity to really... he didn't talk about immigration, for example, and that's a big one for a lot of people. I'm not saying... I'm not trying to be overly critical just to be critical of him. I'm just saying he kind of leaves you wanting more. Well, you're in an interview. Give the people what we want. We want to hear your platform. We want to hear how your strategy is going to change. Maybe it's with his advisors. His policy on immigration. He needs to hammer home on that a little bit more. And then that's why the guy says, you're a good politician, and he is. But that's also what people don't like about him. Now, I don't have a problem with a career politician myself, but the issue is how do we get people to come back to the Conservative Party where they were before Mark Carney was basically installed as the Liberal leader / Prime Minister? And I'm not sure that answer moves the needle enough. But let me know what you think.
Are ultimately accountable for the election result. The CPC National Council is responsible for the terrible result, the changes to the CPC National Council. Can we expect, or what changes can we expect to see under your direction?
Well, the council is elected by the members, so they will be the ones that you will show up at the convention. You can elect a council. But our focus, we're going to be focusing relentlessly on affordability. That is our biggest priority, the cost of living.
Good.
People cannot afford to live right now. After 10 years of inflationary spending, big, costly, expensive government, Canadian people are becoming increasingly clear on the point that we are the only party that will ever give them a chance to have a life that they can afford. And our strategy is very simple. We're going to focus on prosecuting the costly credit card agenda of the Liberals and providing a hopeful opportunity that people will be able to afford their lives under a future Conservative government.
Good. So younger and youth voters, you mentioned my granddaughter. That was prophetic that you knew I had a granddaughter. They're obviously an important demographic. And what is the strategy to attract more to the Conservative brand and encourage to participate, advocate, and lead and vote?
Well, that's actually another area of good news in that we won the youth vote this last election. That's true. Not only that, the Elections Canada held a mock election in the high schools across Canada, and Conservatives finished first.
Yep.
In other words, that
is true.
I don't know if that's ever happened before. And, I think Churchill said, if you're not a conservative, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 50, you have no brain. I've never believed that to be true, but I was thrilled to see that the next tranche of eligible voters, many of whom will have gone from being too young to vote to old enough by the time the next election happens, could put Conservatives by a long shot as their preference. And I think it's very clear.
Now, the problem with that, though, is that if Mark Carney gets a deal done with Trump, say in January, and then calls an election in February when he goes up in the polls, which will probably happen, unfortunately, when he does get a deal, whether it's good or not. That's what I'm worried about. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it would be beneficial to Mark Carney if he does get a deal done before the NDP has their leadership race, call another election, probably win a majority, and then we got to deal with 4 more years. Now, after those 4 years, it's like, okay, those 16-year-olds will be 20, the 15-year-olds will be 19, the 14-year-olds will be 18, and yes, we'll have a big influx of Generation Alpha who are probably going to be very conservative, and that will start in 2029, I believe. Now, I haven't even posted this video yet, but I already know there's going to be a massive amount of people rolling their eyes when I say that, and I get it, because it's like 2029, we can't wait that long, and I hear you. 2029 to get things started is boy, that's going to be tough for a lot of Canadians over the next 4 years. But what I am saying, though, is that if we can find a way to win the next election, whenever it is, and then you'll have another influx of those Generation Alpha voters coming in 2030, 2031, whenever that next election would be, Pierre would probably gain votes as long as he doesn't mess things up when he wins. So if we can find a way to get him in there, he will likely not just win one term. He'll probably win 2, if not 3. So that's the good news about that.
The young people today are the hardest working and have sacrificed the most of any generation since the Second World War. I regularly meet youth who are, while they go to school, are holding down 2 or 3 jobs just to keep their head above water. They're not saving anything up for a mortgage. The idea of backpacking around Europe, which was a kind of luxury that prior generations could take for granted, that's not even on their radar because they can't afford anything. And we are the only party that is providing our young people with the hope that they can afford a home, have a great job, start a family, have kids.
Yes.
So our message for the youth, and I believe the reason why we will have a youth-led victory in the next election, is homes, jobs, and hope. Homes, jobs, and hope. And that's what's going to bring it home for us.
Okay, I love that. Because young people getting together, having children is something that needs to happen. Now, politicians aren't really talking about the birth rate, and Pierre didn't really mention specifically the birth rate, but you know that he knows what it is. And that 1.3 isn't sustainable. And it's only getting worse. I think in Japan it's like 0.8. I mean, we can't have this happen. So even though I did have a little bit of a criticism for Pierre at the beginning, the more he spoke about it, the more he talked about other issues. And again, I don't have any children. I want to. But it's so hard to even be able to afford it. There's also social divide, etc., etc. But the fact that he's mentioning it is very, very good in my opinion. So I thought he was leaving us hanging there at the beginning, but no, he is going more into this. So this is good. I didn't pre-watch this. I like to react to these kind of videos and interviews with you guys, just to kind of give my perspective in real time. Great answer.
Well, all us young guys would agree with that.
Hey, you're youth, aren't you?
Yes,
Great.
I am. So that moves on to the octogenarians.
Youth used to be 30, but with inflation, it's 40.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just made it. So we have a lot of octogenarians in the room today, like old Dennis O'Rourke in the back corner there, and his gang here today. Many who swung to the Liberals in their last minute of the election. What is your message to them to gain their support?
Well, the first thing is that a lot of our seniors are struggling to pay for their groceries. That they notice the food prices are rising faster than their pensions, and their fixed incomes make it impossible for them to have the life that they were promised. Unfortunately, grandkids to have the same opportunities that you have. And I would encourage every retired person who has grandkids to ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their lives are. Ask them how their rent is, whether they can afford to pay their bills. And you know, you might have been poking and prodding them to give you great grandkids. You might ask them the reason why they haven't been able to settle down and buy a home. Many of them do want to. I meet a lot of young people who say they want to get married to have kids, and they simply can't afford it. There would be no place to raise those kids. So these are things that we used to take for granted in Canada, but I think all of our grandparents need to reflect on the opportunities that this country supplied so many generations and make sure that your grandkids have those opportunities as well.
So, great answer. And so you're saying that there's a role that they have to get involved in shaping the youth and helping communicate the plan.
Well, in a lot of ways, what we need to do is the youth already have the message. They know what they want. They want to get out there and work hard and earn a great life. And I think the message is that they want to get the same promise from the country that retired Canadians had when they were young.
Okay, great answer. Unfortunately, it was a little long. Dennis fell asleep in the back there, so we'll have to sharpen that up, I guess.
We have a video we can show it to.
Play back later.
All right.
Again, maybe some more time on the pickleball court for you, and you can get that out there to him as well.
Are you going to give me pickleball lessons now?
Not me. No, but the old folks will.
All right, I'm going to cut it off there. They're getting a little bit off topic, but again, a little bit critical at the beginning. Thought he left us hanging, but then he kept giving us more answers. He still didn't mention immigration, but he has been mentioning that more since the election. I hope he continues to do that. Overall, I thought, especially when he talked about people having kids and affordability. I mean, that's the number one issue in Canada, right, is affordability. So, and he's ahead on that, like, big time in terms of, who would you vote for if that was the only issue? Pierre would win big time. The problem is you also have Trump and you have the NDP in shambles and people still like Carney. But again, have hope. Pierre's hopefully going to learn from his mistakes, talk about things like immigration more. Hopefully he'll get a better advisory team and really get things moving here so he can get those swing voters back and we can have hope again. We can have a middle class again. People have kids again. And that's what we need.